The sun was just rising when she packed her car for the long drive home. A soft smile crossed her face as she thought about her mother waiting at the porch. The smell of breakfast, the sound of home. She turned on the radio, humming along, feeling safe on that empty highway. But safety can change in a second. Flashing blue lights appeared in her mirror. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. A voice shouted from behind the car. "Step out of the vehicle, now!" She raised her hands, her voice shaking. "Officer, is there a problem?" The answer came cold and sharp. "You people always have problems." Two guns pointed at her chest. But none of them knew who she really was. And what that salute, just minutes later, would mean to them all. Angela Carter had been waiting for this day all year. After 8 months of deployment overseas, she finally had a week to spend with her mother in Georgia. She loaded her small gray sedan with gifts. Her old guitar and her uniform neatly folded in the back seat. The road stretched for miles, lined with early winter trees. The sky was pale blue, quiet, and endless. She felt peace for the first time in months. She drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the small medal that hung from the rearview mirror. It was her father's. He had served before her, long before things had changed for black soldiers. Angela whispered softly, almost to herself, "I'm coming home, Dad." A song came on the radio, her mother's favorite gospel tune. She laughed quietly, singing off-key, tapping the steering wheel to the beat. Her heart felt light. She thought about her mom's cooking, the smell of cornbread, and how her mother always called her my soldier girl. For a moment, Angela forgot everything else, the sand, the noise, the orders. She was just a daughter going home. But miles ahead, the highway sign read, "State Patrol Checkpoint, 2 miles. She didn't think much of it. She had her license, registration, and military ID. She had nothing to hide. She adjusted her mirror and kept driving, unaware that this stretch of road would soon test everything she believed about home, respect, and the uniform she wore with pride. The flashing lights appeared behind her car. Red and blue reflections danced across her windshield. Angela slowed down, pulled over to the shoulder, and turned off the engine. Her heartbeat picked up steady but strong. She rolled down her window as 2 white officers stepped out of the patrol car. One of them, tall with mirrored sunglasses, rested his hand on his holster. The other, younger and tense, walked around the back of her vehicle. The older one spoke first. "License and registration." Angela nodded calmly. "Sure, officer. It's in the glove compartment, all right if I reach for it?" He didn't answer. His jaw tightened. "Go ahead, slow." She did exactly as told. She handed over her license, then her military ID with it. He glanced at the IDs but didn't look closely. "Where are you headed?" "Home, sir. Visiting my mother in Georgia. I'm coming from Fort Benning." The younger officer circled back to her side. "Fort Benning, huh? You expect me to believe that?" Angela's voice stayed calm. "You can check the ID, officer. It's real." The older one leaned closer. "You military folks think you can do whatever you want, don't you?" "I didn't do anything, sir. I just pulled over when you asked." "Keep your hands where I can see them." She placed both hands on the wheel. Her chest tightened as the second officer reached for his gun. "Step out of the vehicle." Her throat went dry. "Is there a reason, officer?" "You don't ask questions." "Step out! Now!" Angela took a slow breath and opened the door. The cold wind hit her face as she stepped out onto the asphalt. Cars passed slowly, drivers glancing but not stopping. "Turn around. Hands on the car." She obeyed, trying to stay calm. She had faced worse in war zones. But something about this moment cut deeper. The idea that her own country saw her as a threat in uniform or out of it. The older officer's voice grew louder. "What's in the trunk?" "My bag, sir. Just clothes and gifts." He looked at her again as if her words were an insult. "You got any drugs in there? Weapons? You people always got something." Angela closed her eyes for a moment. "Sir, with respect. I serve in the United States Army. I've just come home from service." He scoffed. "Yeah? Prove it." Angela's voice trembled slightly. "My uniform's in the back seat." "Please, I don't want trouble. I just want to go home." The younger officer aimed his weapon. "Keep your hands up." Her arms were shaking now. The sound of engines, the wind, and the officer's voice all blurred together. She thought about her mother's face, waiting by the window. She didn't know that in the next few minutes everything would change, and that a passing car would stop for her when no one else did. Angela stood beside her car, her hands raised high. The cold air made her fingertips numb, but she didn't move an inch. The two officers circled around her like she was a criminal. The older one kicked the tire of her car. "You said you serve in the army, huh? What are you, a cook or something?" Angela kept her tone steady. "I'm a staff sergeant, communications division." The younger one laughed under his breath. "Staff sergeant, that's cute." He opened her car door without permission and started rummaging through the back seat. Her uniform hung neatly inside a clear bag. Her medals, still pinned, caught the sunlight. "Look at this," he said, holding it up. "You actually think this means something?" Angela took a deep breath. "That uniform means I risked my life for this country." The older officer stepped closer. "Don't get smart. You people always play the victim card." A small crowd had started to form from cars slowing down. Someone held up a phone, recording quietly. Angela's voice broke slightly. "Sir, please. I haven't done anything wrong." The younger one pointed the gun straight at her. "Get on your knees." Her eyes widened. "Please don't do this. I'm not a threat." "Do it now!" Angela slowly lowered herself to the ground, her knees touching the cold pavement. She could feel her heartbeat pounding in her chest. Every second felt heavier. The older officer turned toward the younger one. "Let's teach her what happens when someone lies to us." But before he could take another step, a distant voice called out, "Officers, what's going on here?" They turned toward the sound. A black SUV had stopped a few feet away. A man stepped out, tall, fit, dressed in a military jacket. His tone was sharp, commanding, and calm all at once. The man walked closer, his boots crunching against the gravel. He flashed a badge from his jacket pocket. "Major Daniel Harris, United States Army." The officers hesitated. The older one tried to hide his surprise. "This doesn't concern you, Major. Routine traffic stop." Daniel's eyes moved from the officers to Angela, still on her knees beside the car. He frowned deeply. "Routine stop? Then why is a woman with her hands up on the ground?" "She was resisting orders," the younger one said quickly. Daniel's voice stayed calm but firm. "I saw everything from the road. She wasn't resisting." "You had your guns drawn for no reason." The older officer's voice grew defensive. "Sir, this woman claimed to be in the army. We were verifying her story." Daniel stepped closer. "Her name's Sergeant Angela Carter. I recognize her. We served under the same command last year in Kuwait." Both officers froze. Angela lifted her head slightly, her eyes widening in disbelief. Daniel looked down at her and nodded. "Sergeant Carter, at ease. You're safe now." Angela stood slowly, her knees aching. She brushed the dirt from her jeans and looked at the two men in silence. The older officer stammered, "We didn't know she was military, sir." "She didn't—" Daniel cut him off. "You didn't know because you didn't care to ask. You saw her skin before you saw her ID." The tension hung thick in the air. The young officer looked away, his face pale. The older one tried to straighten his stance. "With respect, Major, we were just doing our job." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Your job is to protect citizens, not humiliate them." Angela's voice finally returned, calm but strong. "I told you I was an officer. You just didn't believe me." The older officer muttered something under his breath. Daniel heard it. "Apologize to her, now." The silence felt endless. Then the younger officer mumbled, "Sorry, ma'am." The older one stayed quiet. Daniel took one step closer. "I said both of you." Finally, the older officer looked down. "Sorry, Sergeant Carter." Angela nodded faintly but said nothing. For a few seconds, no one moved. The wind blew softly, carrying the sound of cars rushing by. Then Daniel did something that silenced everyone. He turned toward Angela and stood at attention. He raised his right hand in a perfect salute. Angela blinked, her breath catching in her throat. Slowly, she returned the salute, her posture straight, her eyes steady. People from passing cars had stopped to watch. Some filmed, others stood quietly, realizing what they had witnessed. Daniel lowered his hand and looked at the officers. "That's what respect looks like. That's what she earned." The older officer looked uncomfortable now. He spoke quietly. "Sir, we'll file a report." "We didn't mean to." "Save it," Daniel said. "You almost pulled the trigger on someone who spent years defending your right to wear that badge." Angela turned toward her car, her hands still shaking slightly. Daniel stepped beside her. "You all right, Sergeant?" She nodded weakly. "I'm fine, sir. Just tired." Daniel placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You handled that with more control than most people ever could." She looked up at him. "I didn't want to make things worse. I just wanted to get home. Daniel smiled softly. Then let's make sure you do. He opened her car door, helping her inside. Before leaving, he turned back to the two officers. Next time you stop someone, remember this moment. Remember who you almost disrespected. They said nothing. Angela started her engine. As the car rolled forward, Daniel gave one final salute. The crowd slowly dispersed. In her rearview mirror, Angela saw the two officers still standing there, their heads lowered. And for the first time in hours, she took a deep breath. The road felt different now. Angela drove in silence, the sound of the tires mixing with the pounding in her chest. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She kept replaying every second of the stop. The gun, the voices, the way they looked at her. Her phone buzzed. It was Daniel. He had followed behind her in his SUV to make sure she was safe. She answered quietly. Yeah, I'm okay. His voice stayed steady. Keep driving. I'll stay with you until the next town. They drove for miles without speaking. The highway stretched like a scar across the land. When Daniel finally turned off toward another base, he flashed his headlights once. Angela waved a small thank you and kept going. Hours passed. The sun began to sink. She pulled into a small gas station, her reflection in the window showing someone she hardly recognized. Her eyes were red, her shoulders tense. She whispered to herself, You made it out. You're safe now. An old man at the counter noticed her trembling hands when she paid for coffee. You all right, ma'am? He asked. She nodded. Just tired from the road? He smiled softly. You heading home? Yeah, been a long time. She sat in her car, sipping the coffee. The bitterness reminded her she was still here, still breathing. She reached for her phone again. There were already messages from friends on the base. Someone had uploaded the video of the stop. It was spreading fast. She didn't open it. She couldn't, not yet. Instead, she started the car again and whispered, Almost home, Mom. Night had fallen by the time she turned onto the familiar dirt road that led to her mother's house. The porch light was on, glowing like a promise. Her mother, Evelyn Carter, was waiting outside wrapped in a shawl, hands clasped, eyes scanning the road. When she saw the headlights, she started crying even before the car stopped. Angela stepped out, trying to smile. Hey, Mom! Her mother ran to her and pulled her into a hug that seemed to last forever. You're home, baby. You're finally home. Angela laughed and cried at the same time. I missed you so much. They went inside. The house smelled of cornbread and fried chicken. The same old family photos hung on the wall. Her father in uniform, a younger Angela in training camp, their small-town church choir picture. Evelyn touched her daughter's face. You look tired. What happened on the road? Angela hesitated. She didn't want to ruin this moment. Just a long drive, Mom, nothing serious. But Evelyn could see the truth in her daughter's eyes. Angela, talk to me. Angela sat at the kitchen table, hands folded. 2 state troopers stopped me on the highway. They thought I was lying about being in the army. They pulled guns on me. Evelyn gasped, covering her mouth. Oh, Lord, are you hurt? No, someone stopped to help. Another soldier. He stood up for me. Evelyn took her hand. You don't have to be strong right now. You can just be my child again. Angela looked at her mother and finally let the tears fall. Later that night, while her mother slept, Angela sat outside on the porch, staring at the dark trees. Crickets chirped, and the moonlight rested on her uniform bag beside the chair. She opened the bag, unfolded the jacket, and touched the name patch. Carter. She thought about how close everything had come to ending, how quickly pride could turn into fear. She whispered, I fought for freedom overseas, but it's still a battle right here. The next morning started quietly. Angela woke to the smell of breakfast and the sound of her mother humming in the kitchen. For a few peaceful minutes, she almost forgot about everything that had happened. Then her phone rang again. It was Daniel. Turn on the news, he said. Angela walked to the living room and switched on the TV. Her face filled the screen, the footage from the night before. 2 officers, guns drawn, a woman on her knees. Then the moment Daniel arrived and saluted her. The reporter's voice said, A viral video from Georgia is sparking national attention. A black female Army sergeant was wrongfully detained during a highway stop. The incident is raising questions about racial bias and respect for service members. Angela stood frozen. Her mother came to stand beside her. That's you, baby. That's you. Messages started flooding in. Old friends, fellow soldiers, reporters, and strangers from across the country. Some were angry. Others were proud. One message stood out. It was from a young black girl who wrote, "I saw your video. I want to be like you one day." Angela sat back on the couch, speechless. Her mother turned down the volume and said softly, "God works in mysterious ways. They tried to break your spirit, but look what he did instead." Angela nodded slowly. "I didn't want anyone to see that moment. I just wanted to go home." "But maybe home is bigger than this house," Evelyn said. "Maybe someone out there needed to see how you stood tall." By afternoon, military officials released a statement confirming her service record. The governor called personally to apologize. The police department announced an internal review. Daniel sent a text. "Told you the truth would come out." Angela smiled faintly. "Yeah, it did." That evening, she stepped outside again. Children rode bicycles past the fence, waving at her like she was famous. Neighbors called out, "We're proud of you, Sergeant!" She smiled, still unsure how to feel. She wasn't angry anymore, just thoughtful. Sometimes justice didn't come from courts or commands. Sometimes it came from the simple power of people watching and refusing to look away. She looked up at the sky, painted in shades of orange and gold. Her father's medal glinted softly in her hand. "I hope I made you proud, Dad." A week passed. The headlines slowly shifted to other stories, but the video never really faded. In towns across the country, people still shared it with the caption, "Respect has no color." Angela stayed home with her mother, helping around the house, visiting old friends, and spending quiet evenings on the porch. For the first time in months, she felt peace. One afternoon, a letter arrived from the state police headquarters. It was an official request for her presence at a community forum. The 2 officers from the incident would be there too. Evelyn looked at the letter. "You don't have to go if you don't want to." Angela folded the paper carefully. "Maybe I do. Not for them, but for everyone watching." 2 days later, she walked into the town hall wearing her uniform. The room was filled with local officials, veterans, and community members. Cameras lined the back wall. The same 2 officers sat at the front table looking uneasy. When the moderator called her name, Angela stepped to the microphone. Her voice was calm and steady. "I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I came because what happened on that highway shouldn't happen to anyone else. I serve this country because I believe it can be better than its worst moments. We all have to be better." The audience stayed silent. She looked directly at the 2 men who had stopped her. "I accept your apology, but apology means nothing without change. I hope you'll wear your badge differently from now on." The older officer stood up slowly. His voice was low but clear. "You're right, Sergeant Carter. That day, I saw you as something you weren't. I let my fear make the decision. I've been thinking about it ever since." He looked down, then back at her. "I'm sorry, truly." Angela nodded once. "Then start by treating the next person you stop like a human being." The crowd began to clap quietly, then louder, until the hall filled with applause. Daniel was there too, standing in the back. He smiled and gave her a small thumbs up. Angela took a breath and stepped away from the microphone, feeling lighter than she had in a long time. A month later, Angela visited the local high school to speak with students about service and respect. The gymnasium was full. Rows of young faces looked up at her with curiosity and admiration. She told them her story, not the viral version, but the human one. How fear feels when a gun is pointed at you. How strength isn't always about fighting back. Sometimes it's about staying calm. And how wearing a uniform doesn't make someone better than others. It just means they chose to serve. After she finished, a young girl raised her hand. "Sergeant Carter, when that man saluted you on the highway, how did it feel?" Angela smiled softly. "It felt like someone finally saw me. Not as a color, not as a suspect, but as a person who had given everything she had to protect others. That salute wasn't for rank. It was for respect. And respect is what we all deserve." The students stood and clapped. Some of them had tears in their eyes. As Angela left the school, she saw the same highway in the distance, the same stretch of road that had once filled her with fear. Now it just looked like a road again. She pulled over for a moment and stepped out of the car. The wind was warm, carrying the sound of cicadas. She stood quietly, remembering every second of that morning. Then she reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out her father's medal. She pinned it above her name tag, straightened her shoulders and whispered, "I'm still standing, Dad. I'm still proud." Cars passed by, unaware of the history written on that piece of asphalt. Somewhere far away, the two officers were beginning their new community training program, working with other soldiers to understand bias and duty. Angela looked up at the open sky. Freedom, she thought, wasn't just about where you could go. It was about who you could be without fear. She got back in her car, turned the key and smiled as the radio played that same gospel song from her first drive. Her mother was waiting at home, and this time the road felt safe. The camera would fade out there, a soldier, a daughter, a survivor, driving toward the horizon with peace finally in her hands. Your turn. What's the life lesson you're walking away with? Tell us in the comments. Like and subscribe the channel for more interesting videos.